Hello, everyone. Welcome to our research highlight for October 2025. My name is Claire Mclean. I'm a physical therapist and I run Rogue Physical Therapy and Wellness, which is a wellness program for people who have Parkinson's. We both have a gym here in Orange County, California, and we also have an online exercise membership. And our goal is really to take what the research says about exercise and lifestyle changes and help support people in implementing those changes so they can have the best outcomes and be their healthiest selves while living with Parkinson's. So each month I do a research highlight, and recently I focused on some older studies. One of the first studies that came out showing improvement in the brain for people with Parkinson's who are exercising was published in 2007 or 8. And a lot has been published since then. I have a lot of articles that I really love and help guide our programming in classes. So I've been reviewing those for a while, but this month I'm going to talk about a very recent article. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So this article was just published in August 2025 by Professor Ding Ding et al. And this group looked at a meta-analysis, so looking at a whole bunch of different studies that maybe each looked at specific health outcomes. They put that all together to see what number of daily steps is correlated with better health outcomes and mortality, reduced mortality. So they looked at a lot of different articles. I'm just going to go ahead and read the abstract. That'll give you really good information. This article is available free full text, which is great. So I'll include the link to the free full text, but if you just were to Google this title, Daily Steps and Health Outcomes in Adults, a Systematic Review and Dose Response Meta-Analysis, then it would pull up. I just did that myself. I Googled it. Then it pulls up the article here. I click on the Lancet and you can read the article here. But if you want a PDF, which is a little bit cleaner and better for printing, you say, oops, nope, I don't want to download the full. I don't want to download the full issue. I just want the PDF. Interesting. All right. So to download from here, when I first pulled it up, it looked like the download PDF was right here, but now I'm not seeing it on this website. But if I click also available on Science Direct, and then there I can click view PDF. Here I have the PDF and I'll include this link. So, summary, despite the rapid increase in evidence from the past decade on daily steps and health-related outcomes, existing systematic reviews primarily focused on few outcomes, such as all-cause mortality. This study synthesized the prospective dose-response relationship. So, how many steps makes a difference? What dose do you need to really make a difference between daily steps and health outcomes, including all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, cognitive outcomes, mental health outcomes, physical function, and falls. So this is not specific only for people with Parkinson's. This is looking at a big population. For the methods, for the systematic review and meta-analysis, they searched PubMed and EBSCO, CINAHL for literature published between January 1st, 2014, February 14th, 2025, supplemented by other search strategies. Eligible prospective studies examined the relationship between device-measured daily steps and health outcomes among adults without restrictions on language or publication type. Pairs of reviewers independently did the study selection, data extraction, and risk of bias assessment using the 9-point scale. So they wanted to make sure the studies we're using is valid, good information to look at. Findings, this is the important part. So 57 studies from 35 cohorts were included in the systematic review, and 31 studies from 24 cohorts were included in the meta-analysis. For all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, dementia, and falls, an inverse nonlinear dose-response association was found with inflection points around 5,000 to 7,000 steps per day. An inverse linear association was found for cardiovascular disease mortality. So basically, when it comes to all-cause mortality, all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, dementia, and falls, that 5,000 to 7,000 steps per day was the inflection point. An inverse Incidence, let's see, or an inverse linear association was found for cardiovascular disease mortality, cancer incidence, cancer mortality, type 2 diabetes incidence, and depressive symptoms. Based on our meta-analysis, compared with 2,000 steps per day, 7,000 steps per day was associated with a 47% lower risk of all-cause mortality, a 25% lower risk of cardiovascular disease incidence, a 47% lower risk of cardiovascular disease mortality, a non-significant 6% lower risk of cancer incidence. So it did not have a huge difference on whether someone was diagnosed with cancer, but it did have a 40, or wait, where's the number? A 37% lower risk of cancer mortality. So if someone did have cancer, they had significantly reduced chance of dying at that time with the cancer. Let's see, where were we? 6%, 37%. There's a lot of numbers in here. A 14% lower risk of type 2 diabetes, a 38% lower risk of dementia, a 22% lower risk for depressive symptoms, and a 28% lower risk of falls. Studies on physical function reported similar inverse associations. The evidence certainty was moderate for all outcomes except for cardiovascular disease mortality, which was low, cancer incidence low, physical function low, and falls low. So basically, huge impact on the number of steps that you are taking per day on health outcomes. Their interpretation is, although 10,000 steps per day can still be a viable target for those who are more active, 7,000 steps per day is associated with clinically meaningful improvements in health outcomes and might be a more realistic and achievable target for some. The findings of the study should be interpreted in light of limitations, such as the small number of studies available for most outcomes, a lack of age-specific analysis, and biases at the individual study level. So with any research, there are some limitations in the information, but overall, this is the best data that we have in terms of recommendations for number of steps per day. So this article goes on longer. I'm not going to read more. I think just take home point of let's think about 7,000 steps per day. So if you're interested in incorporating this, if you're already measuring your steps per day, it would be great to look and see what is your average. If you are not measuring your steps per day, you might want to think about, how would I measure that? Do I want to get a Fitbit? Do I want to get an Apple Watch? Do I want to wear on my phone on me most of the time in maybe a fanny pack or in your pocket, but keep it on you most of the time so you have more accurate data? So first step is you want to see where you're at now. When it comes to exercise and activity, it's not the smartest thing to do to just set a goal without knowing where you're at now. If you were perhaps only getting 1 or 2,000 steps per day and you tried to get 7,000 all of a sudden, you might not feel very good doing that. You might have soreness or fatigue. It's best to see where you're at and then set goals to work your way up towards that eventual goal. I think that about 1,000 steps per day increase from wherever you're at right now. So if you were under 1,000, I'd say your first goal would be to get to 1,000. If you're between 1 and 2,000, your goal would be to get over 2,000. And then for about a week, maybe. So let's example of saying you're at 3,000, about 3,000 steps per day. So your goal is going to be 4,000 steps per day. So you would have that goal and try to reach that most days of the week. Then the next week, if you've been able to do that consistently, you would bump it up to 5,000. And then the week after that, 6,000. And then the week after that, 7,000. That rate of progression could happen a little bit slower depending on how you are feeling with it. But first, see where you are, set goals, and track that over time, and know that those steps that you're getting in really do make a huge difference in terms of your mortality, fall risk, risk of dementia, some things that are very significant and relevant for all of us. The other thing I'll say about it is for most people, it takes about 10 minutes of continuous walking to get about 1,000 steps. So if you think about that, that's why getting 1,000 more steps per day, I don't think is too unreasonable, whether that's you go for 2 5-minute walks or you go for a 10-minute walk, you walk around your house, you stay more active. If you're sitting reading a book or something or watching TV, that each 30 minutes or hour, you get up, walk for a few minutes. It's really easy to not get very many steps per day. It is easy to be sedentary. We live a life where we're in our homes, we're driving, most of us are driving most of the places we're going, unless you live in a really walkable place. So we spend a lot of time sitting, driving, being transported, different places and not necessarily using our legs to get where we want to go. So just being aware of this and then, adding in 10 more minutes per day. It is really easy to not get 7,000 steps per day, but if you start paying attention to it, it is a pretty achievable goal over time. So I hope you all are excited to see this data, motivated by the potential improvements that you could experience. Please let me know if you decide to start tracking your steps or if you start setting a goal of increasing the number of steps that you attain. And you can send me an email with that information to claire@roguept.com. Put a comment here on the video. And yeah, I hope you try it and I hope you feel better with more activity. I'll see you all next month.